She was about 3 years old, and her mother was killed in a car accident. So, at 22 years old, as I just began my job into sales and trying to climb this ladder, now I just found out that I was a single father. What I always say is, we didn't have enough for food stamps, but we didn't have we weren't poor enough for food stamps, but we didn't have enough to really like live. Back then candy bars were a quarter, and if we were at the grocery store, I couldn't even get a candy bar when I was a kid. And so that was kind of the life, I guess, to give you a perspective of growing up. But I always saw my parents work extremely hard, super proud of them for giving me a lot of that work ethic. And, when I was growing up, I was about 12 years old, and my uncle, um, he was a VP of a pharmaceutical company. Saw him once a year, and really, like, he was that one person in our family that did something different. And when I was 12, he flew my brother and I to Atlanta, Georgia. First time I ever flown, get to Georgia, see their house, Porsche, Cadillacs, Corvettes, boats, really big house. And I was just really like, wow, like this is my family. And so I think early on at 12, that really it pushed me into the light of really knowing this was my family. This is something that is achievable. I can have this, and at that point, I really wanted to change and really wanted to figure out how to do that. Okay, now I'm a single dad with two kids, and I'm still traveling 30 weeks out of the year, trying to build this life, this legacy of trying to obtain wealth that I never, that was my goal growing up. And so ultimately, just to fast forward through some of that a little bit, so I was divorced twice, have three children, and and that gets me to where I am today. Recently married, my wife has a child. We've been together 7 years. That was one of the learning lessons of being really young and falling into relationships, and then children coming out of that and learning how to become a father, become wealthy. But in that process, I really lost myself. I was out with customers, entertaining clients, building relationships, letting my body go, drinking way too much, just eating food wherever, eating good food, eating bad food. Like I was just, I ate at some of the best steakhouses in the world, but my health was really, really declining. And in the process, I lost myself. I didn't really like myself, or what I always say is I like myself. I didn't love myself, if that makes sense. And so around 30 years old, this is about 11 years ago, I made a decision to get my health right. And when I did that, that was what I needed. That was the pivotal moment when I learned to love myself. And I didn't really understand like getting my health right, eating clean, working out, what that was going to bring me, because I did it like most people do out of vanity. I did it because I wanted to look good. I was like, oh, I had the dad bod, it didn't look good. How can I, you know, fill this void that I think I was missing because I didn't like what I saw in the mirror? A better friend, a better husband. Because, I look back at those failed marriages and, I was the common denominator for that. And I understand that. And I had a lot of demons I was dealing with, um, in that process. So now knowing this is where I am, this is who I am, and I'm a really great person for other people because I love myself, and that was huge for me in that process. My oldest is 19, and she's just got to figure it out. She's at the point where she's got to figure it out, and I can give her all the advice. I say, okay, here's your situation. Here's the best solution. Good luck. And honestly, and I have to mean it. And our relationship's actually gotten like 10 times better solely by me just saying, okay, it's your life, you got it.
Sure.
And so that's tough. That's tough because I'm just like, I know. I'm like, you're gonna in 5 years, some of those things you're gonna say you wasted time.
Yeah,
But
you know it.
sometimes
But
they
then
have to
also,
learn.
if you don't do it, then you don't have that experience. And then what if that 5 years of wasted time now doesn't ever get experienced and she doesn't learn it was a waste of time? So then she ends up wasting 20 or 30 years doing something.
It's power, it's money, and it's image. That's the three things that I believe motivates, and it can be shared. It can be only one. I remember through the process that money drove me hard. I was super motivated by money, but then there's also a point where you get enough money that it's like there's no the motivation's missing, maybe a little bit. But what happened was my motivation turned into power. And then, I wanted to be in control of things. That's when I started my own business. And yeah, the money was there, but now the power was super motivating for me. And I remember going through the process of years and saying, image will never motivate me. I remember specifically being cold, hard, dead thought image would not motivate me whatsoever. Well, now it does to an extent. And the reason it does is because, I have to market myself. I have to keep myself in a certain shape. I have to market my clients. I have to do things that I need image through marketing, people on social media, on the internet, wherever, to see that. So now image is becoming more motivating to me as I go. So it's really weird to see that spectrum happen to get me there.
They never see themselves as as a skinny. I don't want to say skinny, but like as a
Yeah.
thin, fit, like healthy person. They still see themselves as a fat person or somebody who's unhealthy, who's getting healthy. Well, once you complete the getting healthy process, then you never changed your mindset to being a thin, healthy person or a fit, healthy person. You were always somebody getting healthier, or you were always somebody who was losing the weight rather than somebody who was a healthy person. This goes back to the Alexander thing. Are you somebody who's serving the God of losing weight? Or are you somebody, or how you look or whatever it is, or are you somebody who identifies as a fit specimen of a human being
Mm-hmm.
at your peak performance level, and you're going to not stop until that is accomplished, and there's never ever a time when it gets accomplished. So it's, how do you see yourself? I see it in finances. People are like, well, I'm going to pay off a bunch of debt, so they build this neural pathway of being a debt payer, and they pay off debt, tens of thousands of dollars of debt in a year, and they're like, I accomplished my goal. And then where do they end up? Right back in debt, because they never built the identity of a fiscally responsible, economically responsible individual. They never built the identity of a long-term saver. They never built the identity of an investor. They never built the identity of somebody who's financially responsible. They always built the identity of, I'm paying off debt. I'm paying off debt. Debt's bad. And then they go right back into it because they accomplished their goal, and then they go back to it.
Yeah. I will say on the fitness side of it, the mindset shift is anywhere from 3 to 5 years before you start feeling like you're that person. Instead of being like, I'm this fat person, I'm this fat person, when you're not really, but you're mentally, you still think that, you still feel it, you remember all those years. And the same thing, I'm naturally a skinny guy. I was 150 pounds out of high school. So, it took me personally, it was around 4 years for me to start coming to terms with like, I'm not this skinny guy anymore. Like I'm 232 pounds, like 8% body fat, 10% body fat. Like
Jacked.
this, you know what I mean? I'm not skinny, but mentally it took a long time to like change that shift. And yeah, so 3 to 5 years, I've seen it take people to come to terms with themselves that they are really who they are. Like, no, you're actually lean, mean, and look great. You
Yeah.
really are.
Yeah, no, I love that. If you come out of that experience going to your uncle's house believing, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. I'm destined for greatness. I'm destined to become financially successful. I'm destined to achieve all that I want out of life. Versus somebody else who thinks, maybe I can. I'm supposed to. It's for the right person, right? All of these different things. The person who believes he's a god and is going to go claim what's his acts differently than the person who is trying to please the gods, because the gods could be
Mhm.
anything. The gods could be social media. The gods could be the people around you. The gods could be your parents. They could be your own impressions of what you think somebody thinks about you. They could be the laws of the land. The gods could be anything in that scenario. So do you believe you are a god, or do you believe that you're there to serve the gods? And I'm not talking necessarily in deity perspectives here, but what do you believe about yourself and what's your identity? And that changes the certainty on the battlefield.
That's the biggest thing is some people, it's not being a victim. It's understanding you went through this. How did you get through it? Learn from it. We all have wins and losses. It's just a matter of how we deal with the losses. Does that become, you can think of it as a loss and that you're a loser and a failure, or you can think of it as you're winning because you're learning. And I think the moment someone can understand a loss as a win, just by understanding you're learning something. Now, it's what you do with it after that.
And a lot of becoming a leader is not anything more than acknowledging that you already are a leader. Whether you like it or not, you are setting an example, and people around you are following or adjusting their life based off of what they see you do or not do. Whether you like it or not, it's something we can't control. That's something that's happening. Whether we like it or not, they're either deciding to be more like us or less like us based on what they perceive the outcome of our actions are, or what they like. And so if that's the case, then what type of example are you setting for the other people around you? And if you ask yourself that question and then ask yourself, are you okay with it? What type of example are you okay with it? So the first question we really highlighted in this is the question of, how can I benefit from this? How could I teach this to somebody else? What am I gaining from this experience? All of those three questions, whichever one rings true to you, ask that question to yourself. But then ask yourself the other question of, what example am I setting for others? I know there's a lot of things that I've been through in my life that I focus, almost maybe to a detriment sometimes. Cause I don't know, it's like mourning or going through hard things is the example that it's okay to process your emotions. Is that a better example than to say, look, some things you just need to get on with life? That's also a good example. Like there's pros and cons to every way of being. And you just have to ask yourself, are you okay with the way that you're being?
Yep. That's right.